Today, we are diving into one of my most favorite topics, and that is how to grow a year round garden. Not just a spring garden, not just a summer garden, but one that keeps producing throughout every season. And I know that might sound overwhelming, especially if you're just trying to figure out when to plant your tomatoes. But I promise by the end of this episode, you're going to walk away with simple and actionable tips that you can start using today, no matter what your experience level is. And of course, if you're in California, especially here in Zone 9 like me, we are incredibly lucky to live in a place where gardening year round is totally possible. So, whether you're brand new or you've been gardening for years, I think this episode is going to be really helpful. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm Audrey Crawford, a lifelong gardener from the Central Valley of California, and this is the Audrey's Little Farm Show, where I take the guesswork out of gardening to help you grow a successful garden one simple step at a time. All right, so let's jump in. So, one of the biggest mistakes I see is gardeners treating gardening like a seasonal hobby. You know, we all get excited in the spring. It's the most popular time of the year to grow a garden, and most people plant everything in April, harvest some things in July, and then that's it. But here's the thing. Gardening doesn't have to stop after summer. In fact, some of my favorite crops to grow are actually the cool weather crops that grow in the fall and the winter. And the truth is, once you learn to plant with the seasons, you can grow something almost every month of the year. And beyond the harvest, gardening year round just brings so much joy, whether it's picking lettuce in February or walking out to grab some fresh cilantro in December. There's just nothing like it. So let's talk about how to actually make this happen. Well, here in Zone 9, we really have two main growing seasons: cool season crops for the cool season and warm weather crops for the warm season, which is technically true for most areas. However, if you have a really short growing season, you might be more limited on the times of year you can grow, right? So, cool season crops include things like lettuce, kale, broccoli, carrots, beets, and spinach. They thrive in temperatures between 40 and 70 degrees, and many can handle a light frost. Some, like kale, can even survive colder temperatures. And then we have warm season crops like tomatoes, peppers, and green beans, and cucumbers, and squash, the things that really love the hot weather. And they need consistent daytime temps above 70 and nighttime temperatures above 50 to really thrive. So, as you plan your year round garden, you want to match your planting schedule to the ideal growing conditions for each crop, not just the calendar date. For example, I don't just plant broccoli in January because the planting calendar tells me to. I do it because I know that there should be enough cool weather left for the broccoli to actually mature. So I really have to look at the calendar and the temperatures and the future forecast to know whether or not I can plant certain crops. All right, and now I want to pause here and talk about something that I think is a huge game changer in the garden. And that is realizing that your first planting date in spring is not your only planting date. I used to think, okay, it's finally warm enough. I'll plant my tomatoes, my beans, my cucumbers, and then I'm done for the season. But what I've learned over the years, especially living in a place like Zone 9 with a really long growing season, is that I can keep planting these warm weather crops for months. I don't have just one planting date. I can continue planting them over and over again. So, as long as your weather stays warm enough and you have enough days left in your season for a crop to mature, whether it be that you're planting warm weather crops and you need enough warm days left, or if you're planting cool weather crops and you have enough cool days left, you can keep planting that crop over and over again. So, for example, instead of planting green beans once in late April and getting one big harvest, you can plant again in May, again in June, and even into July and get harvest every few weeks. It's also really helpful for crops like tomatoes. Let's say you plant in April, but something happens. Maybe the weather turns weird, or pests hit hard, or the plants just struggle. Well, you're not out of luck. You can plant again in late spring or early summer, and you'll still get an amazing harvest. Of course, if you live in a place with a short growing season where your summer is only a few months long, your planting window is tighter. But here in California, Zone 9, and many other warm zones with long growing seasons, you have time. And that gives us so much flexibility to space things out and keep those harvests coming. And that is where Seedtime comes in. If you have followed me for a while, you've probably heard me talk about my favorite garden planning tool, and that is Seedtime. I seriously use it for everything when it comes to planning my garden. It helps me lay out my planting dates based on my exact location, figure out when to start seeds, when to transplant, how to plan out multiple successions of a crop. It honestly takes the stress and the confusion out of planning, especially when you're trying to juggle multiple crops, staggered plantings, and making sure you get the most out of your space. It just makes everything so much easier. So if you've ever felt overwhelmed by trying to figure out your planting dates, or you just wanted a better way to plan out your successions, definitely check out Seedtime. It's hands down the best tool I have found, and I can't recommend it enough. In fact, let me go ahead and show you an exact video of what this looks like inside Seedtime. So if you're listening to the audio only version of this podcast, you can head over to the video podcast on YouTube, and the link for that will be in the show notes, and then you can watch this section as well. So right here, I've pulled up my garden plan for the season, and what I love is how visual and easy it is. You can see each crop, when to start seeds, when to transplant, and when to expect harvest. For example, let's say I want to succession plant green beans. I can just click right here and add a second planting 2 to 3 weeks after the first. It shows me exactly how much time I have left in my growing season, so I know whether I have enough warm days left for that crop to mature. I also use Seedtime to plan out all of my other crops because it just takes out all of the guesswork. I'm not flipping through seed packets or second guessing my timing. I just plug in the crop and it tells me what I need to do and when. You can also customize your location, which means it adjusts all of your planting dates based on your local frost dates. What I also love is that you can manually adjust. So for us, our average last frost is March 2nd, but based on weather data from the last few years, we've had cooler spring temperatures and late storms. And so I switch my date to April 1st, and then it will automatically adjust all of my planting dates. Honestly, this tool has completely changed the way I plan my garden. I used to spend so much time trying to figure out planting dates, and now it's just all right here. It's streamlined, it's visual, and it's super intuitive. So if you want to try Seedtime out for yourself, I'll link to it in the show notes below. It's 100% the tool I recommend for planning a year-round garden without the overwhelm. And speaking of getting the most out of your growing season, let's talk about one of my favorite strategies, which is succession planting. This just means planting small amounts of the same crop at different times instead of all at once. This way, you don't end up with just one big harvest on the same day. For example, I'll plant a few rows of lettuce every couple of weeks. As one batch starts to slow down, another one is just getting ready to harvest. This works great for other leafy greens too, like spinach, or when it comes to root crops like carrots. Instead of planting 100 carrots on day one and getting one big harvest, you could plant 20 carrots every couple of weeks and have spaced out harvest for over a month. Or for crops like cauliflower or broccoli, you can stagger them too. So instead of harvesting 8 heads of cauliflower in just 1 week, you can stagger your plantings to then get 2 each week for about a month. So my best tip is to think of the crops that your family eats most and start there. For us, it's always leafy greens. We have a salad basically every day or every few days, so I want lettuce in my garden basically all year long. So I'm sowing seeds every couple of weeks as long as the weather is favorable for lettuce to grow. And again, this is where Seedtime really shines because you can see all of your successions visually laid out on the calendar, so it's super easy to keep everything organized. The next tip for growing year-round, especially if you're trying to grow a lot in a small space, is to implement companion planting. This is where you group crops together that help each other grow. For example, planting basil next to tomatoes. In the summer, basil benefits from the afternoon shade of tomato plants and actually grows better. Some say the basil even improves the flavor of tomatoes, although that's something I can't prove. The next idea is to maximize your space with crops that have different growing habits. So, for example, you can grow peas up a trellis with beets below and lettuce tucked in. You're then using the vertical space and the underground space all at once. Just make sure to not overcrowd your crops, especially with things like tomatoes. You want to still make sure you give your crops plenty of space, but be sure to tuck in herbs and smaller crops nearby when they can thrive without competing. Another great companion planting tip is to add lots of diversity to your garden. And not just for variety's sake, but when you plant a mix of vegetables, herbs, and flowers, you're doing so much good for your garden ecosystem. For example, flowers like calendula, sweet alyssum, and marigolds attract pollinators that are essential for your summer crops like squash and cucumbers and melons. The more pollinators you bring in, the better your harvest will be. But even beyond pollination, planting different crops from various plant families helps support the microbial life in your soil. Each plant interacts with the soil in its own unique way. Some send down deep roots that help break up the soil. Plus, each plant family gives off compounds that attract different beneficial microbes. So when you plant with diversity in mind, you're naturally building healthier soil, attracting the right insects, and creating a garden that's more resilient and productive overall. Even just tucking in herbs like dill, cilantro, or parsley along your veggies can make a huge difference. And they're also great for attracting beneficial insects too. And now let's talk about a few things that will make your garden way more manageable year round. And the first is consistent watering. I highly recommend drip irrigation with a timer. It keeps your soil evenly moist, it saves water, and takes the stress off of you physically having to be out there watering. Mulching is another must. It helps hold in moisture, regulate soil temperature, suppress weeds, and improve your soil over time as it breaks down. The second tip is pest protection. So, in the cooler months, insect netting works great because most cool weather crops don't need pollinators. For summer, plant lots of beneficial herbs and flowers to attract the good bugs that help keep the bad ones in check. And remember, healthy soil equals healthy plants. The more you take care of your soil, the fewer problems you're going to run into. Okay, friend, I know that was a lot of information, but I want you to leave this episode feeling encouraged. You can grow a year round garden. It might take some planning and experimenting, but once you get into the rhythm of planting with the seasons, it really becomes second nature. And if you're listening to this thinking, this is exactly what I've been needing help with, then I would love to invite you to Audrey's Little Farm Academy. Inside, I share seasonal garden tours showing you what I'm doing in real time and offer personalized help so you're never left guessing what to do next. Plus, you get access to all of my products, such as my course Effortless Irrigation and all of my planting guides. So the link to join will be in the show notes below. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If you loved this episode, it would mean so much to me if you would leave a review or share it with a gardening friend. I will see you in the next episode, and until then, happy gardening.